Hello, my dear adventurers. If you like the story, please subscribe. Welcome back to another evening of shared stories and ancient wisdom. Tonight, we journey far across the great waters to the warm lands of Africa, where the Baobab trees reach toward the sky like the gnarled fingers of time itself, where the drums speak in languages older than memory, and where the ancestors walk beside the living in ways both seen and unseen. This is a story about remembering, about honoring those who came before, and about a young woman who learned to listen when others had forgotten how. So settle in, make yourself comfortable, and let us begin. The sun was setting over the village of Mazembe. It painted the sky in shades of orange and deep purple, like the inside of a ripe mango mixed with the darkest indigo cloth. The air was warm, still holding the heat of the day, but carrying with it the promise of a cooler evening ahead. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of cattle lowing as they were brought in from the fields. The smell of cooking fires drifted on the breeze, carrying the scent of roasting maize and simmering stew. In the center of the village stood the great Baobab tree. This tree was older than anyone could remember. Its trunk was so wide that 10 men holding hands could barely circle it. Its roots reached deep into the red earth, and its branches spread out like a vast umbrella, providing shade during the hot days and shelter during the rains. This was the gathering tree, the meeting place, the heart of the village. And beneath this tree, as he had for more years than most could count, sat Kofi the griot. Kofi was an old man, though no one knew exactly how old. His face was a map of wrinkles, each line telling a story of laughter or sorrow or deep thought. His hair was white as cotton, cropped close to his head. He wore a robe of woven cloth, dyed in rich browns and golds, with patterns that seemed to shift and change in the firelight. Around his neck hung several strings of beads, each one given to him by a different village, each one representing stories learned and wisdom shared. Tonight was special. Tonight was the festival of harvest, when the village came together to celebrate another year of good crops and to give thanks for the blessings they had received. But more than that, it was a night for stories. It was a night when the boundary between the living world and the world of the ancestors grew thin, like morning mist, and wisdom could flow between them as easily as water flows downhill. The children arrived first, as children always do. They came running from their homes, their feet kicking up little clouds of dust. They carried woven mats to sit on and small clay lamps filled with oil. They settled themselves around Kofi in a semicircle, their faces eager and bright in the gathering darkness. Next came the young men and women, walking in pairs and small groups. They had finished their work for the day. The fields were harvested, the animals were tended, and now they came seeking entertainment and perhaps, though they might not admit it, seeking wisdom too. Finally came the elders. They walked slowly with dignity, leaning on carved walking sticks. They settled themselves on wooden stools that the young people brought for them. They had heard many of Kofi's stories before, but they came anyway. Because a good story is like a good meal. It nourishes something deep inside, and you can return to it again and again, finding something new each time. When everyone was settled, Kofi raised one hand. The talking and laughter gradually quieted. Even the smallest children stopped their fidgeting. In the sudden silence you could hear the crackle of the fires, the chirping of crickets, and the distant call of a night bird. "Welcome, my friends," Kofi said. His voice was soft but clear. It carried easily in the evening air. "Welcome to another night of stories and remembering. Tonight I will tell you a tale. It is a tale about a young woman named Amara. It is a tale about listening, about honoring, about the connections that bind us to those who came before and those who will come after." He paused, letting his words settle over the gathering like a gentle blanket. "Some of you," he continued, his eyes twinkling in the firelight, "will hear this story and think it is just a story, something to pass the time on a pleasant evening. But others among you will hear something more. You will hear the voices of your own ancestors whispering through my words. You will feel their presence as real as the earth beneath you and the sky above you." A little girl in the front raised her hand. "Grandfather Kofi," she said, her voice small but brave, "what is an ancestor?" Kofi smiled at her, the wrinkles around his eyes deepening with genuine warmth. "Ah, little Zara, that is a very good question. An ancestor is someone who came before you. Your mother and father, yes, but also their mothers and fathers and their mothers and fathers before them, going back and back and back, like links in a great chain. Each one of us is connected to all who came before." "But they are dead," said one of the older boys, trying to sound practical and grown up. "How can dead people help us?" "Dead?" Kofi chuckled. "Who says they are dead, young Kwame? The body returns to the earth, yes, but the spirit, the essence of who they were, the wisdom they gained in their lives, that does not die. It joins the great river of all who came before. And from that river, if we know how to listen, wisdom flows to us still." He reached into a leather bag beside him and pulled out a small drum. It was beautifully carved, covered in stretched hide and painted with symbols and patterns. He held it up so everyone could see it. "Ah, this drum," he said, "belonged to my teacher. And before him, it belonged to his teacher. And before that, to her teacher. It has been passed down through 7 generations of griots. When I play it, I am not just making sound. I am speaking with the voices of all those who played it before me. I am letting their wisdom flow through my hands." He tapped the drum lightly, producing a soft, resonant tone that seemed to vibrate in the chest. Then he set it down gently beside him. "But now," he said, his voice taking on that particular quality that every storyteller has when they are about to begin in earnest, "Now, let me tell you about Amara. Let me tell you how she learned to listen when no one else would. Let me tell you about the time the rain stopped and how the ancestors showed the way forward." He shifted slightly on his seat, settling himself more comfortably. The audience leaned forward, ready. "Amara lived in a village much like this one," Kofi began. "It was a good village with good people. They grew their crops. They raised their animals, they celebrated together and mourned together, but somewhere along the way they had forgotten something important. They had forgotten to honor their ancestors properly. They still performed the rituals, yes, but they did them without thinking, without feeling. The words became empty, like husks after the grain has been removed. A murmur went through the crowd. Some of the elders nodded knowingly. Amara was different, Kofi continued. From the time she was very young, she could hear things that others could not. She would pause while working in the fields and tilt her head, listening. She would wake in the night and speak to the empty air. Her mother worried. Her father thought she was peculiar. The other children, they kept their distance. They thought she was strange. Ah, what did she hear? Asked little Zara, unable to contain her curiosity. She heard the ancestors, Kofi said simply. She heard them as clearly as you hear my voice right now. They spoke to her in a rustle of leaves. They called to her in the wind. They sent her messages in her dreams. And they were trying to warn her. They were trying to warn the whole village, but no one would listen. He paused for effect, letting the anticipation build. The rainy season was coming. Every year, as regular as the sunrise, the rains would come. They would water the fields and fill the wells and make everything green and growing. The village depended on these rains. Without them, the crops would fail. Without the crops, people would go hungry. This was the way of things, the cycle of the seasons, as unchanging as the stars in the sky. But that year, and here Kofi's voice dropped lower, making everyone lean in closer to hear. That year, the ancestors were restless. That year, they had something important to say, and only Amara could hear them. Kofi looked around at all the faces watching him, young and old, all equally caught in the spell of the story. It was early evening, much like this one, he said. Amara had finished her work for the day. She had helped her mother grind the maize. She had fetched water from the well. She had swept the compound. Now, as the sun was setting, she walked to the edge of the village. There was a place there, a small grove of acacia trees, where she liked to go to think, where she liked to go to listen. She sat down beneath the largest tree and closed her eyes. The evening was calm, the air was still, and then she heard it, a voice, soft as a whisper but clear as a bell. It was her grandmother's voice, her grandmother who had died 2 years before. Kofi's voice became gentler, almost like he was channeling the grandmother himself. Little bird, the voice said. That was what Amara's grandmother had always called her. Little bird. Little bird, you must warn them. The rains will not come this year. The balance has been broken. The old ways have been forgotten. If the people do not remember, if they do not honor us properly, the land will suffer. You must make them listen. Amara opened her eyes, Kofi continued in his normal voice, and she looked around. There was no one there, just the trees and the gathering darkness, but she had heard the voice as clearly as anything. She stood up, her heart beating fast. She had to tell someone. She had to warn the village. She ran back toward the center of the village, where the elders were gathered for their evening meeting. They sat under the big tree, much like we sit here now, discussing the affairs of the village. Amara approached them, trying to catch her breath. Honored elders, she said, bowing respectfully. I have something important to tell you. The ancestors have spoken to me. They say the rains will not come this year. They say we have forgotten to honor them properly. Kofi paused, shaking his head slowly. The elders looked at each other. Some frowned, some sighed. One of them, an old man named Tembo, spoke up. "Amara," he said, not unkindly but firmly, "you are a good girl. You work hard. But you must stop this foolishness about hearing voices. The rains will come as they always do. They have come every year since our grandfather's grandfather's time. They will come this year, too." "But the ancestors," Amara started to say. "The ancestors are at rest," another elder interrupted. "We perform the rituals, we pour the libations, we speak the prayers. There is nothing more needed. Go home now, child. Help your mother with the evening meal." Amara wanted to argue. She wanted to make them understand, but you do not argue with the elders. So she bowed again and walked away, her heart heavy with worry. Kofi picked up his drum again and tapped it gently, a slow, sad rhythm. "The days passed," he said. "The season for planting came. The farmers prepared their fields, they turned the soil, they selected their best seeds, they waited for the rains." And Amara heard the voices of the ancestors every day, growing more urgent. Her grandmother, her grandfather who she had never met, great aunts and uncles, distant cousins from generations past, all of them trying to get through to her, all of them warning her. Still, Amara tried to tell others. She told her mother, who patted her head and told her to stop dreaming. She told her father, who said she needed to focus on practical things. She told her friends, but they laughed and said she was making it up. Days turned into weeks. The time when the rains should have started came and went. The sky remained clear and blue. Beautiful, yes, but worryingly so. The farmers began to look up at the cloudless sky with frowns. The wells began to run lower. It was then, Kofi said, his voice taking on a note of determination, that Amara made a decision. If the elders would not listen, if her family would not believe her, then she would have to seek answers herself. She would have to journey to the sacred grove. He stopped and looked around at his audience. Now, the sacred grove was a place spoken of in hushed tones. It was deep in the forest, a place where the boundary between our world and the world of the spirits was thinnest, a place where, it was said, you could speak directly with the ancestors if you were brave enough and pure of heart. No one from the village had been there in many, many years. Was she scared? Asked Zara. Kofi smiled at the little girl. Oh yes, little one. She was very scared, but she was also determined, and sometimes determination can be stronger than fear. He tapped his drum again, this time with a rhythm that suggested journey beginning, steps on a path. That night, while everyone slept, Amara gathered what she would need: a water skin, some dried food, a blanket, a small knife for protection, and one more thing. From the shrine in her family's compound, she took a small wooden carving. It had belonged to her grandmother. It was a carving of a bird, smooth and worn from many years of being held. She wrapped it carefully in cloth and placed it in her pouch. She left a message for her mother, simple and short. I've gone to seek answers. Do not worry, I will return. Then, in the darkness before dawn, she slipped out of the village and onto the forest path. Kofi paused, letting the moment settle. And so, my dear listeners, he said softly, Amara's journey began. A journey that would test her courage, a journey that would teach her wisdom, a journey that would, in the end, save her village and restore the sacred balance between the living and the ancestors. He set down his drum and folded his hands in his lap. But that, he said with a gentle smile, is a story for the next part of our evening. Let us take a moment. Stretch your legs, tend the fire, fetch some water, and then, when you return, I will tell you what happened when Amara walked into the forest. I will tell you about the companions she found and the spirits she met. I will tell you about the wisdom she gained. The gathering stirred. People stood and stretched. Children ran to get drinks of water. The young people added more wood to the fires. The elders talked quietly among themselves. But no one went far. No one wanted to miss what would come next. Kofi sat quietly beneath the great Baobab tree, his eyes closed, his lips moving slightly. He was preparing himself, gathering his thoughts, listening perhaps to his own ancestors, asking them to guide his words and help him tell the story well, for this was the gift of the griot, not just to tell stories, but to keep them alive, to pass them from one generation to the next, to weave together past and present and future into a single thread of understanding. The fires crackled and sparked. The stars began to appear in the darkening sky, and the village of Mazembe waited for the story to continue. When everyone had settled back into their places, when the fires were burning brightly again, and the water skins had been passed around, Kofi opened his eyes. He looked at his audience with that special gaze that storytellers have, the one that seems to see not just the people in front of them, but all the people who have ever listened to stories since the beginning of time. So, he said, picking up his drum and holding it gently in his lap. Amara walked into the forest. The path ahead of her was dark, lit only by the last stars before dawn. She could hear the sounds of the forest waking up, birds beginning their morning songs, the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth, the whisper of wind through the leaves. He tapped the drum softly, creating a rhythm like footsteps. The forest was not a place of fear for Amara. She had gathered herbs here with her grandmother when she was small. She knew the trees and the paths, but she had never gone deep into the forest. She had never traveled toward the sacred grove. That was different, that required courage. As the sun rose, painting the sky with light, Amara stopped to rest beside a stream. She drank from the cool water and ate a little of her dried food. She was about to continue when she heard a voice. "You're traveling alone? That is unusual." Amara looked up quickly. Standing on the other side of the stream was a young man. He was perhaps a year or two older than her, tall and lean with an easy smile. He carried a walking stick and a small pack. His clothes marked him as a traveler, someone not from her village. Amara stood up, keeping the stream between them. Her hand moved toward the knife at her belt. "Who are you?" she asked, trying to sound braver than she felt. The young man raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "My name is Jabari," he said. "I am a trader's son from the village of Kakuma, 3 days' walk from here. I am traveling to meet my father, who is conducting business in the towns to the north." "And you are?" "Ah, I am Amara," she said, relaxing slightly. The young man's face was open and friendly. "I am from Mazembe village." "Mazembe," Jabari said, nodding. I know it. A good village. But you are traveling in the wrong direction if you are heading toward the northern towns. The path you are on leads deeper into the forest toward... He paused and his expression changed. Toward the sacred grove. Kofi's voice took on a note of significance. Yes, Amara said simply, that is where I am going. Jabari crossed the stream, stepping carefully on the stones. He came closer to Amara, studying her face. You are serious, he said. It was not a question. But why? People do not go to the sacred grove anymore. It is a place of the spirits, a place of the ancestors. It is not for the living. The ancestors have called me, Amara said. My village is in danger. The rains will not come this year. The balance has been broken. I must find out what needs to be done to restore it. Jabari was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something that surprised Amara. I will come with you. What? Amara blinked. Why would you do that? You have your own journey. Your father is expecting you. Jabari smiled that easy smile again. My father will wait. He is a patient man. But you, traveling alone into the deep forest, seeking the sacred grove? That is either very brave or very foolish. Either way, you should not go alone. My mother always taught me that when someone needs help, you help them. It's the way of things. Kofi nodded approvingly as he told this part of the story. And so, he continued, Amara gained a companion. They traveled together through the morning, following the path that led deeper into the forest. Jabari, it turned out, was good company. He knew songs and could tell funny stories about the places he had pinned with his father. He made Amara laugh, which she had not done in many days. But as they walked, Amara began to hear the voices more clearly. Her grandmother, her grandfather, others she did not recognize. They were calling to her, encouraging her, guiding her steps. You are hearing them now, Jabari said quietly. It was not a question. He had noticed the way Amara would tilt her head, listening to something he could not hear. Yes, Amara admitted. Can you hear them? No, Jabari said. I do not have that gift. My gift is different. I can find water even in the driest places. I can read the signs of weather in the clouds. Everyone has gifts. Yours is to hear the ancestors. That is a precious thing. His words made Amara feel less strange, less alone. Kofi paused to take a sip from his water skin, then continued. By midday, they reached a place where the forest grew thicker. The trees here were ancient, their trunks covered in moss and vines. The air felt different, heavier, more alive. Amara knew they were getting close to the sacred grove. They stopped to rest in a small clearing. As they sat eating their food, the air around them began to shimmer. Amara felt a tingling on her skin. Jabari felt it too. He stood up, looking around warily. Something is happening, he whispered. And then she appeared. Kofi's voice became soft and filled with wonder. The air before them rippled like water, and a figure formed. She was beautiful and terrible all at once. She looked like Amara's grandmother, but also not quite like her. She was younger somehow, and at the same time infinitely old. She wore robes that seemed to be made of mist and moonlight. Her eyes were deep and kind. Grandmother, Amara whispered, tears springing to her eyes. The spirit smiled. Yes, little bird, it is I, or rather, it is the essence of what I was. I have been calling to you. I am so proud that you had the courage to listen. Amara fell to her knees. Jabari did the same, bowing his head respectfully. "Rise, children," the grandmother's spirit said. "We do not have much time. The boundary between worlds is thin here, but maintaining this form takes effort. I must tell you what you need to know." She moved closer, and though she looked solid, Amara could see the trees behind her through her form. "Ah, the drought that threatens your village is not a natural thing," the grandmother's spirit said. "It is a consequence, a result of broken promises and forgotten obligations. Long ago, when the village was first founded, an agreement was made with the spirits of the land and with us, the ancestors. In exchange for the land's bounty, the people promised to honor us, to remember us, to keep the old ways alive. But we do perform the rituals," Amara said. "I have seen them. The libations are poured. The prayers are spoken." "Yes," the grandmother agreed, "but without understanding, without feeling. The words are said, but the hearts are empty. The rituals have become just movements, just sounds like a drum beaten by someone who does not feel the rhythm. Do you understand?" Kofi tapped his drum to emphasize the point. Amara nodded slowly. She did understand. She had seen it herself. The way the elders performed the ceremonies out of habit rather than reverence. The way the young people barely paid attention. The way everyone was so focused on their daily concerns that they had forgotten why the rituals mattered. "What must we do?" Amara asked. "How can we restore the balance?" The grandmother's spirit looked sad. "That is what you must discover, little bird. I can guide you toward the sacred grove. I can tell you that the answer lies there, in the heart of the place where the ancestors dwell. But the solution must come from you. It must come from your people. We cannot simply tell you what to do. You must understand it. You must feel it. Only then will the balance be truly restored." She began to fade, becoming more transparent. "Wait!" Amara cried out. "Do not leave yet. I have so many questions." "I know, little bird, but I have said all I can. Continue to the sacred grove. Listen with your heart, not just your ears. Trust in the companion who walks beside you. And remember, you are never alone. We are always with you in every step you take, in every breath you draw." With those words, she vanished completely. The air settled. The clearing was just a clearing again. But Amara felt changed. She felt her grandmother's presence still, like a warm hand on her shoulder. Jabari looked at her with wide eyes. "That was—" He seemed unable to find words. "That was my grandmother," Amara said softly. "Or her spirit, her essence." "I've heard stories," Jabari said, "but to actually see, that was a great honor." Kofi shifted his position slightly, settling himself more comfortably. "They continued their journey," he said. "The forest grew stranger and more beautiful as they went deeper. They passed trees that hummed with a sound almost like singing. They crossed streams where the water ran crystal clear over stones that glowed with soft light. They saw birds with feathers of colors that seemed impossible, blues deeper than the sky, reds brighter than fire, greens more vivid than any leaf. This is an in-between place, Jabari said, his voice full of awe. A place where the normal world and the spirit world touch each other. As evening approached, they came to a great fig tree. It stood alone in a small meadow, its branches spreading wide. Beneath it, The ground was covered with soft grass. "We should rest here for the night," Jabari suggested. "It would not be wise to enter the sacred grove in darkness. Better to arrive in the morning when we can see clearly." Amara agreed. They made a small fire and prepared a simple meal. As they ate, Jabari asked Amara about her life in the village, about her family, about what it was like to hear the ancestors. "It is difficult to explain," Amara said. "It is like, you know how sometimes you remember something your grandmother said, and it is almost like you can hear her voice in your mind?" Jabari nodded. "It is like that, but stronger, more real. Sometimes it is just a whisper, a feeling, but other times, like today, they can manifest more fully, especially in places of power like this forest." Are you scared?" Jabari asked. Amara thought about this. "Sometimes," she admitted. "It can be frightening to see things others cannot see, to hear voices others cannot hear. But mostly, I feel grateful. My grandmother loved me very much when she was alive. Knowing that she still watches over me, that she still guides me, that is comforting." They talked late into the night, the fire burning low between them. Jabari told her about his travels with his father, about the different villages he had seen, about the market towns where traders from far away brought goods she had never imagined, spices that could make any food delicious, cloth woven in patterns that seemed to move in the light, tools and trinkets and treasures. "But you know," Jabari said thoughtfully, "in all my travels, I have never seen anything as amazing as what I saw today. Your grandmother's spirit appearing, that was magic, real magic. Not tricks or illusions, but something true and sacred." Kofi smiled as he told this part. As they prepared to sleep, Amara heard the voices again, soft and distant, like many people whispering at once. They were closer now. She could feel it. The sacred grove was near. Tomorrow they would reach it. Tomorrow she would find the answers her village needed. "Jabari," she said quietly into the darkness, "thank you for coming with me. I do not think I could do this alone." "You are stronger than you know, Amara," Jabari replied. "But I am glad to be here. This feels important, like we are part of something bigger than ourselves." They fell asleep beneath the great fig tree, and as they slept, the ancestors watched over them. Spirits moved through the forest, curious about these two young people who had come seeking wisdom. The animals of the forest approached their camp, unafraid, and kept guard through the night. When dawn came, Amara woke to find a small bird perched on a branch above her. It was the same kind of bird her grandmother had always called her after. A bright little thing with yellow feathers. It sang a beautiful song, then flew off toward the east. "A sign," Jabari said, already awake and packing their things. "We should follow it." And so they did. They followed the bird deeper into the forest. The trees here were even older, even more massive. Some of them had trunks so wide you could carve a home inside them. The air shimmered with a golden light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The bird led them to a wall of vines, thick green vines covered in white flowers that smelled sweet and clean. The bird flew straight through the vines and disappeared. "This is it," Amara said. She could feel it in her bones. "This is the entrance to the sacred grove." Jabari stepped forward and carefully pushed aside the vines. Beyond them was an opening, a path, and in the distance they could hear something, a sound like many voices singing, not loud, but constant, like the sound of a river, but made of words instead of water. Amara took a deep breath. "Are you ready?" she asked Jabari. He smiled at her. "As ready as I will ever be." Together, they stepped through the vines and into the sacred grove. Kofi paused, letting the tension build. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Even the smallest children sat still, caught up in the story. "Why, what they saw," Kofi said softly, "took their breath away. But that, my dear listeners, is where we must pause again. For what lies within the sacred grove, what Amara and Jabari discovered there, that requires its own telling, that requires you to be fresh and alert, ready to hear the wisdom that will be revealed." He set down his drum with a gentle finality. "So let us rest again, stretch, breathe, look up at the stars. Remember that we, like Amara and Jabari, are on a journey, and the journey is just beginning." After a brief rest, after water had been drunk and quiet conversations had been had, the gathering settled once more. Kofi looked at them all with eyes that seemed to see into the depths of each person's heart. Then he began again. "The sacred grove," he said, his voice taking on a tone of reverence, "was like nothing Amara and Jabari had ever seen. Imagine, if you will, a place where the trees grow so tall their tops disappear into mist, where the ground is covered not with ordinary grass, but with soft moss that glows faintly with its own light, where flowers bloom in colors that do not exist in the normal world, colors between blue and green, colors between gold and silver." Kofi painted the scene with his words, and his audience could see it in their minds. In the center of the grove stood the oldest tree of all. It was not a baobab, not a fig, not any tree they recognized. It was something ancient, something that had been there since the beginning of time. Its trunk was wider than a house. Its roots spread out across the ground like great rivers made of wood, and from its branches hung thousands upon thousands of small carved figures. Jabari gasped when he saw them. "What are those?" he whispered. "Ancestors," Amara breathed. She knew without being told. Each carved figure represented someone who had passed from the living world. Each one contained a piece of their spirit, their essence, their story. As they stood there, trying to take it all in, the air around them began to fill with light. Soft orbs of luminescence appeared, dozens of them, hundreds. They drifted through the grove like fireflies, but bigger, more purposeful. And as Amara watched, she realized what they were. They were spirits. The spirits of the ancestors taking form to greet these visitors who had come seeking wisdom. One of the lights drifted close to Amara. It hovered in front of her face for a moment, then burst into a larger form. It became a woman, old and wise, with kind eyes and gentle hands. She wore the traditional dress of Amara's people, but from a style many generations past. "Welcome, child," the spirit said. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "We have been expecting you. Your grandmother sent word that you were coming, that you were brave enough to make this journey." Amara bowed deeply. "Honored ancestor, I come seeking help. My village faces drought. We need guidance." The spirit smiled. "Yes, we know. We have been trying to reach your people for many seasons now, but so few can hear us anymore. You are special, Amara. You have the gift of listening. Come, the Council of Elders wishes to speak with you. Kofi's voice became more formal as he continued. The spirit led them deeper into the grove, toward the great tree. As they walked, more spirits appeared. Some took fully formed shapes. An old man with a carved walking stick, a young woman carrying a water vessel, a child playing with a wooden toy. Others remained as lights drifting peacefully through the air. Jabari walked close to Amara. She could see he was nervous, but trying to be brave. She took his hand and squeezed it. He squeezed back. At the base of the great tree, a circle of stones had been arranged. On these stones sat 7 spirits. They were the eldest of the ancestors, the ones who had lived so long ago that their names had been almost forgotten. But their wisdom remained. Their knowledge endured. The spirit who had guided them gestured for Amara and Jabari to sit on the ground before the council. They did so, crossing their legs and placing their hands in their laps respectfully. The spirit in the center of the council spoke. He was an ancient man with a long white beard. His eyes were deep and dark, holding the weight of countless years. Amara of Mazembe village, he said, daughter of the people, granddaughter of those who came before. We greet you. Honored ancestors, Amara replied, her voice shaking slightly. I greet you with respect and humility. I come seeking your wisdom. My village is in danger. The rains have not come. The crops will fail. People will suffer. Please tell me what we must do. Kofi paused and looked around at his audience. The Council of Ancestors looked at each other. Then the Ancient One spoke again. Tell us, child, what do you know of the old ways? What has been passed down in your village about how we should be honored? Amara thought carefully before answering. We perform rituals at the new moon. We pour libations for the ancestors. We speak prayers. We make offerings of food and drink. She trailed off, realizing how empty her words sounded. Yes, the Ancient One said gently. You do all these things, but do you understand why you do them? Amara was silent. She realized she did not know. No one had ever explained it. It was just what was done. What had always been done. A female spirit on the council leaned forward. She had a kind face but serious eyes. Let me tell you a story, she said. Long, long ago, when your village was first founded, the people made an agreement with the land. They asked the spirits of the earth, the spirits of the water, the spirits of the air if they could build their homes here, if they could plant their crops and raise their families. The spirits agreed, but only if the people promised something in return. They must never forget. They must remember that they are part of a great chain, that they come from those who came before and will give life to those who come after. They must honor this connection, keep it strong, keep it alive. Another spirit spoke, a young man with bright eyes. The rituals you perform, they are not just empty actions. They are meant to be a remembering, a connecting. When you pour libation, you are not just spilling water. You are acknowledging that your life flows from those who lived before, that your existence is possible because of their struggles and triumphs and sacrifices. Kofi's drum beat softly as he continued. But over time, the Ancient One said sadly, the people forgot this. The rituals continued, but the understanding behind them faded. The actions remained, but the meaning was lost. And when the meaning is lost, the connection weakens, the balance breaks. The land responds to this. The rains stop, the crops fail, not as punishment, but as a natural consequence, like a plant that is not watered will wither. Amara felt tears running down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered. "We have been performing the rituals without truly honoring you, without truly remembering. We have been saying the words without feeling them in our hearts." "Yes," the Ancient One said, "but understanding is the first step. Now, you must take this understanding back to your village. You must help them remember. You must restore the true meaning behind the rituals." "But how?" Amara asked. "They did not listen to me before. They will not listen now. I am just one person, young, unmarried, without status or authority." The council smiled at her, all of them together. And in that smile, Amara saw understanding and compassion and something else, confidence in her. "You have already done something remarkable," the female spirit said. "You listened when no one else would. You had the courage to make this journey. You sought the truth instead of accepting empty traditions. That takes strength. That takes wisdom beyond your years." "Ah, and you are not alone," said another spirit. "You have your companion." She gestured to Jabari. "He has witnessed what you have witnessed. He can testify to the truth of it, and you have us. We will be with you in ways seen and unseen. We will help guide your words. We will give you the strength you need." Kofi's voice became powerful. The Ancient One stood. He was tall, taller than seemed possible. He raised his hands and spoke in a voice that echoed through the grove. "Amara of Mazembe, we give you a task. Return to your village. Gather the people. Tell them what you have learned, but more than telling, show them. Help them feel the connection. Help them remember not just with their minds, but with their hearts. Create a new ceremony, one that combines the old rituals with new understanding, one that will teach each generation why these things matter." He reached into the air and pulled forth an object. It solidified in his hands, a drum, beautiful and ancient, covered in symbols and patterns. "Take this," he said, offering it to Amara. "This is a drum that has been played by our greatest griots, by the storytellers who kept our memories alive. When you beat this drum, it will call the spirits, it will open hearts, it will help people remember. Use it wisely." Amara stood and accepted the drum with trembling hands. It was warm to the touch, alive somehow. She could feel the spirits of all who had played it before flowing through her fingers. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will do as you ask. I will help my people remember." Kofi demonstrated by lifting his own drum and beating it once, a deep resonant sound. The Council of Ancestors stood as one. They bowed to Amara and Jabari, then they began to fade, becoming light once more. The other spirits in the grove began to fade too, but before they vanished completely, they sang, all of them together. A song without words, a melody that spoke directly to the soul. Amara felt the song wash over her. She felt it fill her with warmth and strength and purpose. She looked at Jabari and saw tears streaming down his face. He felt it too. The song faded. The lights dimmed. The sacred grove became quieter, still beautiful, still peaceful, but emptier. The spirits had returned to wherever spirits go when they are not manifesting in the physical world. Amara and Jabari stood there for a long moment, holding the sacred drum between them. Neither spoke. There were no words for what they had experienced. Finally, Jabari cleared his throat. "We should go," he said softly. "Your village needs you. The rains will not wait forever." Amara nodded. She looked around the grove one last time, committing every detail to memory. She would need to describe this place to her people. She would need to help them understand what she had learned here. They walked back through the vines, carrying the drum carefully. As soon as they stepped out of the sacred grove, the world seemed dimmer, less magical. But Amara carried the magic with her now, in the drum, in her heart, in her understanding. "The journey back will be faster," Jabari said. "We know the way now, and we have purpose driving us forward." They walked through the day and into the night, stopping only briefly to rest. Amara held the drum close, feeling its warmth. Sometimes, as they walked, she could hear soft drumming, not from the physical drum in her hands, but from somewhere deeper. The spirits were with them, guiding them, encouraging them. By the next evening, they could see the smoke from Mazembe village rising above the trees. They were almost home. "Are you ready?" Jabari asked. Amara took a deep breath. "I have to be," she said. "Too much depends on it." They emerged from the forest just as the sun was setting. A group of villagers saw them and ran to alert the others. Within minutes, a crowd had gathered at the village edge. Amara's mother pushed through the crowd, her face torn between relief and anger. "Ah, where have you been?" she cried, pulling Amara into a fierce hug. "We have been so worried. The elders wanted to send search parties, but the fields need tending. The wells are running dry, everything is falling apart, and you just disappeared." "Mother," Amara said gently, "I had to go. I had to find answers. And I did. Please. I need to speak to the elders. I need to speak to everyone." Kofi looked around at his audience, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "The village gathered," he said. "Everyone came. The elders, the farmers, the children, even the very old who rarely left their homes. They gathered beneath the meeting tree. And there, with Jabari standing beside her for support, Amara began to speak. She told them everything about her journey, about meeting her grandmother's spirit, about the sacred grove, about the Council of Ancestors, and most importantly, about what she had learned. "We have forgotten," she said, her voice clear and strong. "We perform the rituals, yes, but we have forgotten why they matter. We have forgotten that we are connected to all who came before us. We have forgotten that honoring the ancestors is not just about rules and traditions. It is about remembering, about feeling, about understanding that we are part of something larger than ourselves." Some of the elders looked skeptical, but others, especially the oldest ones, began to nod. They remembered when the rituals had felt meaningful, when they had been more than just empty words. Amara held up the drum. "The ancestors gave me this, a sacred drum. They want us to create a new ceremony, one that combines the old ways with new understanding, one that will teach each generation why these things matter. Will you help me? Will you join me in remembering?" Kofi paused, building the suspense. There was a long silence. Then, slowly, Old Tembo stood up. He was the eldest of the elders, the one who had dismissed Amara's warnings before. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I did not listen. I thought the old ways were enough, even though we had lost the spirit of them. But this child had the courage to seek the truth. The least we can do is have the courage to hear it." One by one, others stood. They agreed to try, to learn, to remember. And that night, Kofi said with satisfaction, began the true healing of Mazembe village. He set down his drum with a gentle thud. But the full ceremony, the restoration of the rains, the lessons learned that is still to come. Rest now, dear listeners. We are near the heart of the story, but we must approach it with fresh spirits and open hearts. The fire had burned low, but the people of Mazembe were in no hurry to leave. They added more wood, creating fresh flames that danced and crackled. Children nestled closer to their parents. The elders leaned forward on their stools. Everyone wanted to hear what came next. Kofi, seeing their eagerness, smiled and continued. "The days that followed Amara's return were busy ones," he began. "The whole village came together with a purpose they had not felt in years. Amara, with the help of Old Tembo and the other elders, began to plan the ceremony of remembering. That is what they called it. A new ritual that would help everyone truly understand and feel their connection to the ancestors. But first they needed to learn. They needed to remember things that had been forgotten. Amara sat with the oldest members of the village, those whose grandparents had told them stories of how things used to be done. Slowly, piece by piece, they reconstructed the old knowledge. Grandmother Essie was 90 years old, so old she could no longer walk without help. But her mind was sharp as a new knife. She sat in the shade and told Amara about the prayers her own grandmother had taught her. Real prayers filled with meaning and emotion, not just words to be recited, but conversations with the ancestors. "We would call each one by name," Essie said, her cloudy eyes distant with memory. "We would speak to them as if they were sitting right there beside us. We would tell them about our troubles and our joys. We would ask for their guidance, and we would listen. Oh, how we would listen. In the quiet moments, in the stillness, we could feel their presence. We could sense their wisdom flowing into us." Kofi's voice was gentle as he told this part. Amara wrote everything down on pieces of bark paper, every story, every prayer, every detail. She wanted to make sure nothing would be lost again. Meanwhile, Jabari, who had decided to stay in the village to help, worked with the craftspeople. They needed objects for the ceremony, special items that would help focus the people's attention and intention. The woodcarvers created small figures, one for each family. These would represent the ancestors of that family. Each figure was unique, carved with love and care. The carvers worked late into the night, their tools clicking and scratching, their minds focused on honoring the spirits. The weavers created new ceremonial cloths. They used the old patterns that Grandmother Isi remembered, patterns that told stories. A zigzag line represented the journey of life. A circle represented the cycle of generations. A spiral represented the connection between earth and sky, between living and dead. The potters made vessels for libations, beautiful clay pots painted with symbols. These would be used to pour water and other offerings to the ancestors. Everyone contributed. Even the children helped. They gathered flowers and herbs. They collected special stones from the river. They practiced the songs that the elders taught them. Kofi tapped his drum softly. As they worked, something interesting began to happen. The more the people focused on the ancestors, the more they talked about them, the more they shared stories about those who had come before, the closer they felt. Not just to the ancestors, but to each other. Families who had been distant began to reconnect. Old arguments were forgotten, as people remembered that they were all part of the same great family tree. Children began to ask their grandparents about the old days, and the grandparents, so happy to be asked, shared stories they had kept locked in their hearts for years. The village was transforming, not physically, though it did look more alive with all the activity, but spiritually. The very atmosphere felt different, warmer, more connected. Amara watched all this with wonder and gratitude. Jabari would often find her standing at the edge of the village, looking out at the work being done, with tears in her eyes. "Why do you cry?" he asked her one evening. "Because it is working," she said. "Can you not feel it? The ancestors are pleased. The connection is being restored. The balance is returning." And it was true. Even those who could not hear the ancestors as Amara could, even they could feel something changing. A lightness in the air, a sense of hope. Kofi's voice became more excited. Finally, the day came. The day of the ceremony of remembering. They chose the night of the full moon, when the boundary between worlds would be thinnest, when the ancestors would be able to draw closest to the living. All day people prepared. They bathed and put on their finest clothes. They fasted, eating nothing to purify themselves. They decorated the village with flowers and herbs. They prepared food for the feast that would come after the ceremony. As the sun began to set, everyone gathered at the great meeting tree. In the center, they had created a sacred circle. The circle was marked with white stones from the river. Inside the circle, they placed the sacred drum that the ancestors had given to Amara. Around it, they arranged the carved figures representing each family's ancestors. Between the figures, they placed bowls for libations and offerings. Amara stood at the center. She wore a white cloth wrapped around her body. Her hair was braided with flowers. She held a staff made from the wood of the great fig tree where she and Jabari had rested on their journey. The staff had been carved with symbols, and from its top hung small bells that chimed softly when she moved. The elders stood in a circle around her. Old Tembo, Grandmother Essie, supported by her grandchildren, the head farmer, the head weaver, the chief hunter, all the leaders of the village. Behind them stood everyone else, forming circles within circles, all facing the center. The full moon rose, huge and bright, painting everything in silver light. Amara lifted the sacred drum. She took a deep breath, and then she began to play. Kofi demonstrated, beating his own drum in a slow, steady rhythm. The sound of the drum seemed to fill not just the air, but the very ground beneath their feet. It vibrated in their chests, it echoed in their bones. It was not just sound, it was presence, it was power. Amara began to chant. The words were old, taught to her by Grandmother Essie, but she spoke them with understanding and feeling. We call to those who came before. We call to those who walked this earth and now watch from beyond. We call to you, ancestors. We call with respect, we call with love, we call with remembering. The people responded as they had been taught. We remember, we honor, we are your children. Amara walked around the circle, still playing the drum. At each carved figure she stopped. She called out the name of that family's most recently departed ancestor. And she invited members of that family to come forward and speak. One by one, people came forward. Some spoke with confidence, others with tears. They spoke to their ancestors. They told them about their lives, about their struggles and their joys. They asked for guidance. They expressed gratitude. A young mother spoke to her own mother, who had died giving birth to her. "I wish you could see your grandson," she said, holding her baby up toward the sky. "He has your eyes. He has your gentle spirit. I try to raise him as you would have wanted. I try to be brave, though it is hard without you. Please guide me. Please help me be the mother he deserves." An old man spoke to his father, who had taught him to farm. "I still use the techniques you taught me, Papa. I still plant the seeds as you showed me. And when I am working in the fields, I feel you there beside me. I feel your approval. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your patience with a stubborn young man who thought he knew better than his elders." Kofi's voice became thick with emotion. "A little girl spoke to her grandmother so recently passed. Grandmother, I miss you so much. But Mama says you are not really gone. She says you are in the rain when it falls, in the flowers when they bloom, in my heart when I think of you. Is that true? Are you still with me?" As she spoke these words, a gentle breeze stirred through the gathering, though the night had been still before. The bells on Amara's staff chimed softly, and the little girl smiled, understanding the answer. One by one, all the family spoke. They poured libations of water and palm wine. They placed offerings of food and flowers. They sang songs. They shared memories. And as they did this, the air began to shimmer. Lights appeared, small at first, just little sparks, but growing, strengthening. The ancestors were answering the call. They were manifesting, showing themselves to their children who had finally remembered how to truly honor them. Not everyone could see the spirits clearly. Some saw only light. Others felt only a presence, a warmth, a sense of being surrounded by love. But Amara, with her gift, saw them all. She saw them taking form. She saw them moving among their families. She saw them touching heads in blessing. She saw them smiling. She saw them weeping with joy. Kofi's drum beat faster now, building excitement. The ceremony continued deep into the night. The moon traveled across the sky. The stars wheeled overhead, and the people of Mazembe remembered. They reconnected. They restored the sacred balance that had been broken. Finally, as the moon began to set, Amara beat the drum one last time. 3 great booming sounds that echoed out across the land. She raised her staff high. "Ancestors of Mazembe," she called out, "we thank you for your presence. We thank you for your patience with us when we forgot. We promise to remember from this day forward. We promise to teach our children. We promise to keep the connection strong. We ask for your blessing. We ask for your guidance. We ask that the rains may return to our land, that the balance may be restored." The people all spoke together, their voices united. "We remember, we honor, we are your children." And then something miraculous happened. Kofi paused for dramatic effect. Every eye was on him. The sky, which had been clear all this time, began to change. Clouds appeared, not dark and threatening, but soft and gentle. They gathered above the village, swirling and forming, and then, like a blessing from the heavens themselves, rain began to fall. Not a heavy rain, not a storm, but a gentle, steady rain. The kind that soaks deep into the earth, the kind that brings life. The people looked up, letting the rain fall on their faces. Some laughed, some cried, some simply stood in silent gratitude. Children danced in the rain, splashing in the puddles forming on the ground. The elders raised their hands to the sky, thanking the ancestors, thanking the spirits of land and water and air. The rain fell all through the rest of that night and into the next day. It was exactly the rain that was needed. Not too much to flood, not too little to be useless. Just right. Perfect. When the rain finally stopped, the sun came out, and the village saw something they had not seen in many weeks. The earth was dark and wet, the wells were filling, and already the plants that had been wilting were beginning to perk up, to turn green again, to reach toward the sun with renewed vigor. Kofi smiled broadly. The drought was broken. The balance was restored. The connection between the living and the ancestors had been renewed. Mazembe village was saved. In the days that followed, the crops began to grow again. The harvest, though late, was abundant. The people had food. The animals had water. Life returned to normal, but with a difference. The people had changed. They had learned a vital lesson. Every month, on the night of the full moon, they would gather and perform the ceremony of remembering, not because they had to, not out of empty obligation, but because they wanted to, because it filled them with connection and purpose and peace. Amara became the keeper of the sacred drum. She became the one who led the ceremonies, and in time she trained others, so that the knowledge would not be lost again, so that every generation would understand why honoring the ancestors mattered. Jabari stayed in the village. He and Amara were married the following spring, in a ceremony where they honored both their ancestors and asked for their blessing on the new family they would create. The ancestors, of course, gave that blessing gladly. Kofi looked around at his audience with deep satisfaction, and that, my dear friends, is the heart of the story. But there is more to tell. There are lessons to draw out. There is wisdom to extract. So let us rest once more, and then I will tell you what happened next. How the story of Amara and the ceremony of remembering spread beyond her village. How it changed other communities. How it continues to change hearts even today. He set down his drum gently and folded his hands, waiting patiently for his listeners to absorb all they had heard. The gathering had grown quieter now, more contemplative. The story was sinking deep into their hearts. When Kofi began again, his voice was soft but clear, carrying easily in the still night air. "Word spread quickly," he said. "You know how it is in these lands. A trader passes through and hears a story. He carries it to the next village. A traveling merchant mentioned something interesting he witnessed. Soon, people from other villages began to arrive in Mazembe. They came to see if the stories were true. They came to witness the ceremony of remembering. The first visitors arrived just 2 moons after the rains had returned. They were from Kakuma, Jabari's home village. His father had come to visit his son and had been so moved by what he saw that he brought the village elders with him on his next trip. Amara welcomed them warmly. She showed them everything. She explained the lessons she had learned. She let them sit in on a ceremony of remembering, and the visitors from Kakuma wept. They realized that their own village had lost the connection too. They had been performing empty rituals just as Mazembe had been. "Will you teach us?" the eldest of the Kakuma elders asked Amara. "Will you help us restore our own connection to our ancestors?" Amara looked at old Tembo, who had become like a grandfather to her. He nodded encouragingly. "I will help however I can," Amara said. "But understand, each village must find its own way. Your ancestors are not my ancestors. Your traditions are not my traditions. I can show you the path, but you must walk it yourselves." Kofi smiled as he continued. And so Amara became a teacher. She and Jabari would travel to other villages. They would spend days or sometimes weeks helping communities rediscover their connections to their ancestors. They taught people how to listen, how to remember with feeling, not just with words, how to create ceremonies that were meaningful and personal. Sometimes the work was easy. There would be villages where the elders still remembered the old ways and just needed a reminder of why they mattered. In these places, the restoration happened quickly. The ceremonies would be performed with new understanding, and the ancestors would respond with blessings. Rains would come at the right time, crops would flourish, sickness would diminish. But other times the work was harder. Some villages were skeptical. They thought Amara and Jabari were trying to trick them or take advantage of them. In these places, the couple would simply demonstrate. They would perform a small ceremony themselves, calling on their own ancestors. And when the spirits responded, when lights appeared and the air shimmered with presence, even the most doubtful would begin to believe. "There was one village," Kofi said, leaning forward, "called Tumani. It was a large village, prosperous and proud. When Amara and Jabari arrived there, they were met with cold suspicion. The chief of Tumani was a man named Baraka. He was not a bad man, but he was very proud. He thought his village had no need of outside help. "We are doing fine," he told Amara. "Our crops grow. Our people are healthy. Why should we change anything?" "Because fine is not the same as thriving," Amara replied gently. "Because there is a difference between surviving and truly living. Your rituals are empty. Your people go through the motions, but their hearts are not engaged. Can you not see it? Can you not feel the disconnection?" Baraka bristled at this. "You come to my village and insult our ways? You are young and presumptuous. I think you should leave." Jabari put a hand on Amara's arm, ready to lead her away. But Amara stood her ground. "I mean no insult, honored chief," she said. "I speak only truth. But you are right. We are visitors here. We cannot force you to change. We can only offer what we have learned. May I make a request?" Baraka crossed his arms but nodded. Give us 3 days, Amara said. Let us stay in your village for 3 days. Let us speak with your elders, with your people. Let us show you what we have discovered. And then, if you still wish us to leave, we will go. But I believe that once you understand, once you truly feel the presence of your ancestors, you will not want us to leave. Kofi's voice became thoughtful. Baraka agreed, though reluctantly. And so Amara and Jabari stayed in Tumani. They spoke with the old ones. They listened to the stories that had been half forgotten. They spent time at the village shrine, sitting in quiet meditation. And slowly, they began to understand the particular spirits of that place. On the 3rd day, they asked if they could demonstrate a ceremony. Baraka, curious despite himself, agreed. The village gathered. Amara took out the sacred drum and began to play. As she drummed, she called out to the ancestors of Tumani. She spoke their names, names she had learned from the elders. She told them that their children wanted to remember, that they wanted to reconnect, that they were ready to honor them properly. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Some people in the crowd began to mutter. They thought Amara was a fraud. But she kept drumming. She kept calling. And Jabari joined her, his voice strong and clear. And then one of the oldest women in the village gasped. She pointed up at the sky. "Look!" she cried. "Oh, look!" Birds were gathering, hundreds of them, birds of every kind. They circled above the village in intricate patterns. Their wings caught the sunlight, creating flashes of color. It was beautiful and impossible and undeniably a sign. The birds descended and perched in every tree around the gathering place, and they began to sing all together, a chorus so beautiful it made people weep. "My mother," the old woman said, tears streaming down her face. "My mother loved birds. She used to say that when she died she would return as a bird to watch over us. This is her. This is her telling us she is here." Kofi paused to let this sink in. One by one, others in the village began to recognize signs. A particular smell that reminded someone of their grandfather, a breeze that felt like a mother's touch, a feeling of warmth and love that could not be explained, but could not be denied. Chief Baraka fell to his knees. "Forgive me," he said, though it was not clear if he was speaking to Amara or to his ancestors. "Forgive me for my pride, for my blindness. I see now. I understand." The birds stayed throughout the ceremony that Amara led that day. They stayed as the people of Tumani spoke to their ancestors for the first time, with true understanding. They stayed as libations were poured and offerings were made. And when the ceremony was complete, when the connection had been restored, they rose as one and flew away, their song fading into the distance. From that day forward, Tumani became one of the strongest practitioners of ancestor honoring. Chief Baraka became a great advocate for the ceremonies. He would tell anyone who would listen about the day the birds came, about the day he learned that pride is nothing compared to connection. Kofi's voice became warm and pleased. As the years passed, the practice spread. Village after village rediscovered the sacred connection. And an interesting thing began to happen. The villages that practiced true ancestor honoring prospered, not because the ancestors gave them special favors, but because the practice itself created stronger communities. "Think about it," Kofi said. looking around at his audience. When you honor your ancestors properly, what are you really doing? You are recognizing that you are part of something larger than yourself. You are acknowledging the sacrifices and struggles of those who came before. You are connecting with your family, your community, your history. This creates bonds. It creates respect for elders. It creates a sense of responsibility to future generations. People start to think beyond their own immediate needs. They start to consider how their actions will affect their children and their children's children. They start to work together for the common good. The villages that practiced this became peaceful. Disputes were settled more easily because people remembered they were all part of the same great family. Resources were shared more fairly because people felt responsible for each other. Knowledge was passed down carefully because people understood its value. Meanwhile, Amara and Jabari's own family grew. They had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, and from the very beginning they taught these children about the ancestors, not just through ceremonies, but through daily life. When their eldest daughter Zuri asked where she got her gift for singing, Amara told her about her great-grandmother, who had been known throughout the land for her beautiful voice. She told stories of how great-grandmother would sing while working, how her songs would make the work feel lighter and the time pass more quickly. When their son, Kofi, and here the storyteller smiled. Yes, they named him Kofi, asked why he should study hard to learn his lessons. Jabari told him about his own grandfather, who had been a trader and had traveled far. He told how grandfather's knowledge of many languages and customs had allowed him to build bridges between communities. He told how that knowledge had been passed down and had eventually helped Jabari be brave enough to join Amara on her journey. The children grew up feeling connected to their past. They understood that they were links in a great chain, that they had responsibilities both to those who came before and those who would come after. This gave them purpose, it gave them strength. Kofi tapped his drum gently, but the most important ceremony happened every year. On the anniversary of the day Amara had returned from the sacred grove, on the day the rains had first returned to Mazembe, the village would hold a grand festival of remembering. People would come from all the surrounding villages. They would bring stories of their own ancestors. They would share songs and dances and traditions. It became a celebration not just of individual families, but of the entire community of the living and the dead. During these festivals, Amara would often see spirits manifesting. Her gift had only grown stronger over the years. She would see ancestors mingling with the living, proud and pleased to be remembered. She would see them blessing children, guiding the uncertain, comforting the grieving. One year, during the festival, Amara felt a familiar presence. She turned and saw her grandmother's spirit standing beside her, looking exactly as she had that day in the forest when she first warned Amara about the drought. "Grandmother," Amara said softly, "you have been with me all along." "Ah, of course, little bird," her grandmother replied, her voice like wind chimes. "I promised I would always watch over you, but look at what you have accomplished. Look at how you have helped so many people reconnect with their ancestors. I am so proud of you." "Ah, I only did what you taught me to do," Amara said. "I listened. I remembered. I honored." "Yes," her grandmother said, "but you did more than that. You taught others to do the same. You created something that will last long after your own body returns to the earth. You have ensured that the connection will not be lost again. That is a great gift." Kofi's voice became very soft. Amara lived a long life. She saw her children grow and have children of their own. She saw the practice of ancestor honoring spread to dozens of villages. She saw communities transform from disconnected groups of individuals into strong, unified families. When she was very old, when her hair had turned white and her hands were gnarled with age, she would sit beneath the meeting tree in Mazembe and tell stories to the children. She would tell them about her journey to the sacred grove, about the spirits she had met, about the lessons she had learned. And the children would listen, wide-eyed, much as you are listening to me now. One day, she gathered her 3 children around her. She was very old then, ready to join the ancestors herself. She held the sacred drum in her lap, stroking it gently. "This drum," she said, "has served us well. It has called the ancestors. It has opened hearts. It has helped restore the balance. When I am gone, it will pass to Zuri, your eldest sister, and from her to her eldest child, and so on, generation after generation. Guard it well, use it wisely, remember why it matters." Her children promised they would. That night, Amara passed peacefully in her sleep, and the whole village mourned, but they did not mourn as people who have no hope. They mourned as people who understood that death is not an ending, but a transformation, that Amara had simply moved from the world of the living to the world of the ancestors, that she would still be with them, watching over them, guiding them. At her funeral, the ceremony was beautiful. People came from every village she had helped. They told stories of how she had changed their lives. They sang songs in her honor. They poured libations and made offerings. And as the sun set on that day, birds gathered, hundreds of them, just as they had in Tumani years before. They circled above the gathering, their wings catching the light, and everyone understood. Amara was telling them she was there. She was watching. She would continue to guide them from the world of the ancestors. Kofi set down his drum and looked around at his audience with ancient eyes. "And that," he said, "is how the great teachings spread. That is how villagers learn to honor their ancestors properly. That is how the sacred balance was restored, not just in Mazembe, but across the land. But the story is not over yet, my dear listeners, for every ending is also a beginning, and the wisdom Amara taught continues to ripple outward, touching lives even today, even here, even now." He paused, letting those words settle into the hearts of his listeners. "Rest now, stretch, breathe, and then we will speak of lessons. We will speak of how this ancient story applies to our lives today. We will speak of what it means to truly honor those who came before us." After a time of quiet reflection, after people had stretched and talked softly among themselves, Kofi gathered their attention once more, but this time there was a different quality to his voice. Less storytelling, more teaching. He was about to help them understand the deeper meanings woven through the tale, So, my dear friends, he began, we have heard the story of Amara. We have journeyed with her from doubt to understanding, from isolation to connection. But what does this story mean for us? How does this ancient tale touch our lives today? Little Zara raised her hand. Grandfather Kofi, are the ancestors really watching us all the time? Kofi smiled at her. That is a very good question, little one, and the answer is both simple and complex. The ancestors are not watching you the way your mother watches you to make sure you do your chores. The adults chuckled at this, and Zara giggled. But, Kofi continued, they are present in ways both seen and unseen. Think of it like this. When you do something, you carry with you all the lessons your parents taught you, yes? You hear their voices in your head. Be kind, work hard, tell the truth. These voices guide you even when your parents are not standing right beside you. Zara nodded, understanding. The ancestors are like that, but even more so. They are part of you. Their blood flows in your veins. Their experiences shape the world you live in. The house you sleep in, someone built it. The food you eat, someone learned how to grow it. The stories you love, someone first told them. All of this comes from those who came before. When you honor your ancestors properly, you are not just performing a ritual. You are acknowledging this truth. You are saying, I am grateful, I remember. I will carry forward the good things you gave me, and I will try to add my own good things for those who come after. One of the young men spoke up. His name was Kwame. But grandfather, some of us had ancestors who did bad things, who made mistakes. Should we honor them too? Kofi nodded slowly, appreciating the difficult question. Ah, Kwame, you touch on something important. Yes, our ancestors were human. They made mistakes. They had flaws. Some made terrible choices that caused suffering. We do not honor these things. We do not celebrate the mistakes. But, and he raised a finger for emphasis, we can still acknowledge them. We can learn from their errors. We can say, my grandfather made this mistake and I see the harm it caused and I will choose differently. That is also a form of honoring. You honor the lesson even if you do not honor the action. And remember, even those who made mistakes probably did some good things too. Maybe they were poor parents but good farmers. Maybe they were harsh but also taught valuable skills. We take the good. We learn from the bad. We try to be better than they were. That is how we honor them. An elderly woman named Mama Kibibi spoke up. I lost my daughter many years ago. She died young. Sometimes I feel her presence. Is that real? Or am I just imagining it because I miss her so much? Kofi's expression became very tender. Mama Kibibi, grief and love are powerful things. They can make us feel many things, but I believe, truly believe, that when we feel the presence of those we loved, it is real. Maybe not in the way we can touch and see, but real nonetheless. Your daughter's spirit exists in many places, in your memories of her, in the traits she passed to her children, in the lessons she taught while she was here, in the love that she generated that still flows through this community. When you feel her presence, you are touching all of these things at once. And yes, I believe you are also touching her spirit itself, the essence of who she was. Mama Kibibi wiped tears from her eyes and nodded, comforted. Kofi took a drink of water and continued. The story of Amara teaches us many things. Let me share some of the most important lessons I see woven through it. First, it teaches us about listening. Amara had a gift, yes. But all of us have the ability to listen if we choose to. Not just to hear voices, but to pay attention to the wisdom that has been passed down. To listen to our elders. To study our history. To be mindful of the lessons contained in the stories our families tell. How many of us, and here Kofi looked around seriously, ignore the advice of our grandparents because we think we know better? How many of us are too busy to sit and listen to the stories of the old ones? How many of us rush through ceremonies without truly thinking about why we perform them? Several people looked down, recognizing themselves in these words. Amara's first great act was simply to listen, to pay attention, to take seriously the voices that others dismissed. This is something all of us can do. Second, Kofi held up 2 fingers. The story teaches us about courage. Amara was afraid. The journey was dangerous. She could have stayed home. She could have let others ignore the warnings. But she chose courage over comfort. She chose action over passivity. In our own lives, honoring the ancestors properly requires courage. It requires us to ask difficult questions, to examine our traditions and make sure we understand them, to speak up when we see the connection being lost, to maintain practices even when they are inconvenient or when others mock us for being old-fashioned. Third, another finger went up. Community. Notice that Amara did not save her village alone. Jabari joined her. The elders supported her. The whole village participated in the restoration. This teaches us that spiritual work is not just individual, it's communal. We honor the ancestors together. We strengthen the connection as a community. This is why we gather like this, why we tell stories together, why we perform ceremonies as a village rather than just in individual homes. The power is multiplied when we act together. Kofi paused to let this sink in before continuing. Fourth, the story teaches us about balance. Remember, the drought was not a punishment. It was a consequence of broken balance. The natural world and the spiritual world are connected. When we lose our spiritual grounding, when we forget our connections, it affects everything. This applies to more than just rain. When we are not properly connected to our ancestors, to our history, to our community, we become unbalanced. We make poor decisions. We become selfish. We forget that we are part of something larger than ourselves, and this causes suffering. But when we restore the balance, when we remember and honor properly, everything improves. Not by magic, but because we ourselves become better. We think more clearly, we act more wisely, we treat each other better. One of the young women, Asha, spoke up. Grandfather, what about people who do not know their ancestors? Whose families were scattered or enslaved, or who lost their histories? Kofi's face became very serious and sad. Ah, Asha, this is one of the great tragedies. When people are torn from their lands, when their histories are stolen from them, when their names are erased, something precious is lost. And I will not pretend otherwise. But, and his voice strengthened, even in these cases, the connection is not completely severed. You carry your ancestors in your blood, in your features, in certain inclinations and gifts that appear without explanation, and you can honor them even without knowing their names. You can say, to all those who came before me, whose names I do not know, whose faces I have never seen, I honor you. I thank you for your survival. I thank you for your strength. Without you, I would not exist. I will live in a way that makes your struggles worth it. I will create a better world for those who come after. This is not the same as knowing their names and stories, but it is something. It is a connection, and it honors them. Several people nodded, moved by these words. Fifth, Kofi continued, holding up his hand again, the story teaches us about teaching. Remember how Amara did not just restore her own village. She traveled. She taught others. She helped spread the wisdom. We all have a responsibility to pass on what we know, to teach the young ones, to share our stories, to make sure the connection is not lost in the next generation. This is how we become good ancestors ourselves. Every one of you will be an ancestor someday. Every one of you will be the one your great-grandchildren speak of. What do you want them to say? What lessons do you want them to learn from your life? What gifts do you want to pass on? This question hung in the air, and people contemplated it seriously. Sixth, the story teaches us about the power of ritual when it is done with understanding. The people of Mazembe had been performing rituals all along, but the rituals were empty. Just motions, just words. They had no power because they had no meaning. But when the same rituals were performed with true understanding, with real feeling, with genuine connection, everything changed. The rituals became powerful. They opened doorways. They restored balance. This tells us that we must not just go through the motions. We must engage our hearts. We must think about what we are doing and why. We must feel it. When you pour a libation, do not just dump water on the ground. Think about what you are doing. You are acknowledging that your life flows from those who came before, like water flows from its source. Feel that truth, speak it, mean it. When you speak the names of ancestors, do not just recite them like a shopping list. Remember the people those names represented. Remember what they did. Remember what they taught. Let your voice carry love and respect and gratitude. Kofi picked up his drum and held it reverently. This drum, he said, is a tool, but it is also a symbol. It represents communication. When I beat this drum, I am speaking, I am calling, I am creating vibrations that connect this world to the world beyond. Each of you has your own tools for connection. Maybe it is music, like this drum. Maybe it is dance. Maybe it is storytelling. Maybe it is prayer. Maybe it is art. Maybe it is simply sitting in quiet contemplation. Find what works for you. Find what helps you feel the presence of those who came before. But whatever method you use it with intention. Use it with feeling. Use it with heart. He set the drum down gently. Seventh, and perhaps most important, the story teaches us that we are never alone. Even when Amara felt most isolated, when no one believed her, she was not truly alone. Her grandmother was with her. The ancestors were guiding her. Support came when she needed it. This is true for all of us. When we feel lost or afraid or overwhelmed, we can call on the ancestors. We can ask for their guidance. We can draw on their strength. They want to help us. They want us to succeed because our success honors them. Our flourishing is their legacy. You are part of a great chain, stretching back to the beginning of time and forward to the end of days. You are surrounded by those who came before and those who will come after. You are held in a web of connection that can't be broken unless you choose to break it. Kofi looked around at all the faces watching him, young and old, each one precious, each one part of the great story. So, when you leave here tonight, he said softly, when you go to your homes and lie down to sleep, remember Amara's story, remember the lessons woven through it, and ask yourself, how will I honor my ancestors? How will I strengthen the connection? How will I be a good link in the great chain? These are not easy questions, but they are important ones, and the answers will shape not just your life, but the lives of all who come after you. For in the end, we are all Amara. We are all called to listen. We are all called to remember. We are all called to honor. And we are all called to pass on the wisdom to the next generation. He folded his hands in his lap and sat in silence for a moment. Now, he said, before we continue, does anyone have questions? Does anyone have thoughts to share? This is not just my story to tell. It is our story, our shared wisdom. Speak if you wish. And one by one, people began to share. Elders spoke of ancestors they remembered. Young people asked questions about how to honor properly. Families discussed what traditions they would strengthen. The conversation flowed like a river, connecting everyone, and Kofi listened to it all, nodding and adding thoughts where needed, pleased to see the wisdom taking root in new hearts. After the discussion had flowed for a time, after questions had been asked and answered, Kofi raised his hand gently. The talking quieted. He had more to share. I am glad to hear your thoughts, he said warmly. I am glad to see you engaging with these ideas. But now, if you will permit me, I would like to share something more personal. I would like to tell you about my own experience with the ancestors, because this is not just an ancient story. This is something that lives today, that touches all of us. He shifted on his seat, settling himself more comfortably. His eyes grew distant, looking into memory. When I was a young man, perhaps 20 years old, I thought I knew everything. I had studied with my teacher for many years. I had learned all the stories. I had memorized all the traditions. And I thought that was enough. I thought knowledge in the head was the same as wisdom in the heart. My teacher, whose name was Ashanti, tried to tell me differently, but I did not listen. I was too proud. I thought, I am young and clever. What does this old man know that I do not already understand? Several of the young people in the audience looked uncomfortable, perhaps recognizing something of themselves in young Kofi. One day, Ashanti called me to him. He was very old then, near the end of his life. He said to her, Kofi, you know all the words to the stories, but you have never truly felt them. You have never let them change you. You are like someone who knows the recipe for bread, but has never tasted it. I was offended. I argued with him. I said, I know these stories better than anyone my age. I can recite them perfectly. What more do you want from me? He looked at me with sad, tired eyes. I want you to understand, he said. I want you to feel. I want the stories to live in you, not just pass through your mouth. But I cannot give you this. You must find it yourself. I left angry. I thought he was being unfair. I thought he was jealous of my ability." Kofi shook his head ruefully. "A few days later, Ashanti died. He passed in his sleep, peacefully, and I was devastated. Not just because I had lost my teacher, but because I realized our last real conversation had been an argument. I had been so proud, so stubborn, so foolish." At his funeral, the whole village came. Many people spoke about what Ashanti had meant to them, the stories he had told, the wisdom he had shared, the way he had helped them through difficult times. And I sat there listening, feeling more and more small. After everyone had spoken, after the ceremonies were done, I went to his grave. I sat there as the sun was setting, and I talked to him. I said, "Ashanti, I am sorry. I was proud. I was foolish. I did not understand what you were trying to teach me, but I want to understand now. Please help me understand." Kofi's voice became very soft, and then something happened. The air around me grew warm. A gentle breeze stirred, though the evening had been still, and I felt him, not saw. Felt his presence, his essence. It was as if he was sitting right beside me, just as he had so many times when he was alive. And I understood. In that moment, I understood everything he had been trying to tell me. The stories were not just words to be memorized. They were alive. They carried the spirits of all who had told them before. When I told a story, I was not just reciting. I was channeling. I was connecting past and present and future. I was becoming a bridge between worlds. I wept then. I wept for my foolishness. I wept for the time I had wasted being proud, but I also wept with gratitude. Because Ashanti had not given up on me. Even after death, he was still teaching me, still guiding me. From that day forward, I approached the stories differently. I let them live in me. I let them change me, and my telling changed. People could feel the difference. The stories had power they had not had before. Kofi looked around at his audience. "I tell you this because I want you to understand. The connection to the ancestors is real. It is not just a nice idea or a comforting belief. It is true and present and powerful. But you must open yourself to it. You must let go of pride and skepticism and the need to understand everything with your rational mind. You must let yourself feel." Mama Kibibi spoke up. "Tell us more, grandfather. Tell us about other times you have felt the ancestors." Kofi smiled at her. "There have been many times. Let me share a few. There was a time, about 15 years ago, when our village faced a terrible sickness. It came suddenly. Many people fell ill. Children and elders were dying. The healers did what they could, but the sickness was too strong. I went to the sacred grove, to the place where the ancestors dwell. I sat there, and I called to them. I said, 'Please help us, guide us, show us what to do.' I sat there all night, and as the sun was rising, I fell into a sort of waking dream. I saw an old woman. She was not from our village, not from our tribe even, but she felt familiar somehow. She showed me a plant. It grew near the river, she said. A plant with purple flowers and silver leaves. Make a tea from it. Give it to the sick. I had never seen this plant before, but when I went to the river, there it was, exactly as she had shown me. I gathered it and brought it to the healers. They made the tea, they gave it to the sick, and slowly people began to recover. The sickness was defeated. Later, much later, I learned that this plant had been used by healers generations ago, but the knowledge had been lost until the ancestor who appeared to me, who had been a healer in her time, showed it to me again. She had not forgotten. She was still trying to help her people. Old Tembo from earlier in the story spoke, not the character, but an elder in the actual village listening to Kofi. I too have felt the ancestors. When my wife died, I was lost. We had been together for 40 years. Without her, I did not know who I was anymore. I did not want to eat. I did not want to speak. I just wanted to join her. One night, I was sitting alone, and I smelled her perfume, the oil she used to wear made from flowers and spices. I smelled it so strongly, as if she was right there beside me. And I felt her hand on my shoulder. I did not see her, but I felt her. And I heard her voice, not with my ears, but in my heart. She said, "Nah, not yet, old man. You still have work to do. You still have grandchildren to teach. Live for me. Live fully. And when it is time, I will be here waiting." That gave me the strength to go on, to keep living. And now, when I teach my grandchildren, when I tell them stories of their grandmother, I know she is there with us. I know she sees them growing, and that brings me peace. Others began to share their own experiences. A farmer told of how, when he was lost in the forest, he followed the voice of his father guiding him home. A mother told of how, when her child was very sick, she felt her grandmother's presence giving her strength to stay awake and care for the child through the long night. Each story added to the tapestry. Each testimony strengthened the understanding. The ancestors were not distant. They were not abstract. They were here, now, present, active, loving. Kofi listened to each story with respect, nodding and occasionally adding a word of affirmation. When the sharing had run its course, he spoke again. "You see," he said, "this is not just my experience. This is not just an old legend from long ago. This is our lived reality. The ancestors walk with us. They guide us. They protect us. They love us. But they can only help if we let them. If we close ourselves off, if we say this is just superstition or I am too modern to believe in such things, then we cut ourselves off from a great source of strength and wisdom. You do not have to believe exactly as your grandparents believed. Times change. Understanding evolves. But the core truth remains. We are connected to those who came before. And honoring that connection makes us stronger, wiser, better." He picked up his drum again. There is a saying among the griots, "When an elder dies, a library burns." Do you understand what this means? Little Zara raised her hand. "Because elders know so many stories." Yes, Kofi said. "But more than that. Each person who lives accumulates wisdom. They learn lessons, they gain understanding, they develop skills. If they pass these things on before they die, the knowledge lives. But if they do not, if they die without teaching, without sharing, then all that wisdom is lost. Like a library burning, all those books, all that knowledge gone." This is why honoring the ancestors is so important. It ensures that the wisdom is passed on. It creates a continuous chain of learning. Each generation adds to the wisdom of those who came before, and each generation passes it on to those who come after. This way, the library never burns. It only grows larger. But this only works if we listen, if we ask questions, if we spend time with our elders while they are still alive, if we sit at their feet and learn from them. Kwame, the young man from earlier, spoke up. Grandfather Kofi, what if we have questions our elders cannot answer? What if we face problems they never faced? Ah, Kofi said, another excellent question. It is true. The world changes. You will face things your grandparents never imagined, but the principles remain the same. Courage is still courage. Kindness is still kindness. Wisdom is still wisdom. What the ancestors give you is not just specific answers. They give you a foundation, a way of thinking, a set of values. Armed with these things, you can face new challenges. And when you do, when you find solutions to problems your ancestors never faced, you add to the collective wisdom. You become the teacher for future generations. This is how we progress. Not by forgetting the past, but by building on it, by standing on the shoulders of those who came before and seeing further than they could see. And even for new problems, the ancestors can help. Maybe not with specific advice, but with strength, with courage, with the knowledge that others have faced difficulties before and survived. You carry their strength in your blood. You are the descendant of survivors, of problem solvers, of people who faced the impossible and found a way. Never forget that. When things seem darkest, when you face challenges that overwhelm you, remember, you come from people who survived plagues and famines and wars and losses. Their strength is your strength. Their courage is your courage. They are with you. Kofi's voice had become powerful, almost chanting. The audience was completely caught up in his words. And one day, he continued, you will join them. You will become an ancestor yourself. Your children and grandchildren will call on you. They will ask for your guidance. They will draw strength from your story. What do you want that story to be? What lessons do you want to pass on? What wisdom do you want to add to the great library? These are the questions we must ask ourselves every day, not just at ceremonies, not just at festivals, but in our daily lives, in the choices we make, in the way we treat others, in the work we do, in the love we give. Every action is either adding to the library or taking away from it. Every choice is either honoring the ancestors or disappointing them. Every moment is an opportunity to be a good link in the great chain or a weak one. He set down his drum with finality, and that, my dear friends, is what the story of Amara is really about. It is about each of us. Our responsibility, our power, our connection, our purpose. We are not just individuals living isolated lives. We are part of something vast and beautiful and eternal. We are the living branch on an ancient tree. We are the current verse in a song that has been sung since the beginning of time. And the song continues through us, in us, because of us. Remember this, honor this, live this. The silence that followed was profound. People sat with tears on their faces, with hearts full of understanding. The lesson had landed. The wisdom had taken root. And in that moment, beneath the Baobab tree, with the fire crackling and the stars wheeling overhead, the village felt the presence of all their ancestors, watching, approving, blessing. The connection was strong. The balance was restored. The chain was unbroken, just as it should be. After a long pause, after the profound silence had been honored, Kofi stirred. He looked around at his audience with eyes that were both ancient and young. He smiled gently. "Now," he said, "I want to speak of practical things, because wisdom that lives only in ceremonies is not complete wisdom. The honoring of ancestors must be woven into daily life. It must become as natural as breathing. Let me tell you how Amara's descendants continued the practice, how they made it part of everything they did. Because this is where the real power lies, not in grand ceremonies once a moon, but in small acts every day." He settled himself more comfortably and continued. "Amara's daughter Zuri, the one who inherited the sacred drum, had 7 children of her own. Raising 7 children is not easy, as any parent here will tell you." Several parents chuckled knowingly. But Zuri found that invoking the ancestors made everything smoother. When her children quarreled, as children do, she would sit them down and tell them about their great-grandfather, who had been known for his ability to make peace between feuding families. She would say, "You carry his blood. You carry his gift for understanding others. Use it. See the situation from your siblings' eyes." The children would listen. They would remember they came from someone special, and they would try harder to make peace. When her eldest son was struggling to learn the skills of farming, becoming frustrated and wanting to give up, Zuri told him about his great-great-grandfather, who had been the first to bring a new type of grain to the region. She told him how that grandfather had failed many times, how the grain would not grow at first, how he had to experiment and persist and refuse to give up. She said, "You are his descendant. His stubbornness flows in your veins. Keep trying." The boy did keep trying, and he became an excellent farmer, eventually developing new techniques that improved yields for the whole village. Kofi smiled warmly. "You see, the ancestors were not just called upon in formal ceremonies. They were part of daily conversation, part of how the family understood themselves. Each child knew they came from a line of remarkable people. This gave them confidence. It gave them a foundation. When Zuri's youngest daughter was afraid of the dark, Zuri did not just tell her not to be silly. She said, "Your great-grandmother walks in the darkness with you. She protects you. Feel her presence. You are never alone." And the child felt comforted. The fear lessened. This is practical spirituality. This is how the ancestors become real in our lives. An older woman in the audience spoke up. But grandfather, what about when children misbehave? Do we say the ancestors are watching and they will be disappointed?" Kofi nodded. "A good question. Yes, sometimes, but carefully. The ancestors should not become just another tool for punishment. They should not be used to frighten or control children. Instead, we frame it positively. We say, 'You come from people who valued honesty. Let me tell you about your great-uncle who found a pouch of gold and returned it to its owner, even though he was poor and could have used it. That is the kind of person you come from. That is who you are.' We appeal to the child's sense of identity, to their pride in their lineage. This is more powerful than fear. Fear makes children obey when someone is watching. Pride makes them want to be good people even when no one sees. The ancestors become a source of strength and guidance, not of fear. They are on our side. They want us to succeed. They are cheering for us, not waiting to catch us doing wrong. Kofi took a sip of water before continuing. Amara's family also made the ancestors part of their meals. Every evening before eating, they would take a small portion of food and place it in a special bowl. This bowl sat at the table, representing the ancestors' place. They would say, "We share this meal with those who came before. We thank you for your provisions. We remember you." It was a simple act. It took only a moment, but it reinforced every single day that they were part of a larger family, that their abundance came from the work and wisdom of those who came before, that they had a responsibility to share and be grateful. When there was a decision to be made, they would ask, "What would grandmother do?" or "How would grandfather advise us?" They would sit quietly and listen for the answer. Sometimes it came as a feeling, sometimes as a memory of something the person had said when they were alive, sometimes as a sudden clarity about the right path. This kept the wisdom alive and active. It was not locked in the past. It was living and breathing and informing the present. Old Tembo spoke again. "In my family, we have a talking staff. It was my grandfather's walking stick. When we gather to discuss important matters, whoever holds the staff has the right to speak without interruption. The staff reminds us that we speak not just for ourselves, but for all who came before. It makes us choose our words more carefully. It makes us think before we speak." "That is beautiful," Kofi said. "That is exactly the kind of practice I am speaking of. Simple, practical, but profound in its impact. Each family can develop their own practices. There is no one right way. What matters is that the ancestors are remembered, that they are honored, that they are made part of daily life. Some families keep a shrine in their home. It can be simple, a shelf with photographs or drawings of the deceased, a candle that is lit each evening, some flowers or offerings, a place to sit and remember, to speak to those who have passed, to ask for guidance. Some families plant trees in memory of the ancestors. Each tree represents someone. The family tends the trees, watches them grow, sits in their shade. The trees become living memorials. When the wind rustles the leaves, it is the ancestors speaking. Some families keep journals. They write down stories they remember, lessons they learned, characteristics they noticed. These journals are passed down. Each generation adds to them. They become treasuries of wisdom. Kofi gestured widely. The form does not matter as much as the intention. What matters is that you find ways, daily ways, to keep the connection alive, to make the ancestors real and present in your life. A young mother with a baby in her lap spoke up. "Grandfather, I want to do this for my daughter. I want her to grow up knowing the ancestors. But I do not know many stories about my grandparents. They died when I was young. How can I teach her what I do not know?" Kofi's expression was compassionate. "This is a challenge many face, but there are solutions. First, talk to other elders in your family, aunts, uncles, older cousins. They may remember stories you never heard. Gather what you can. Second, even if you do not know specific stories, you can tell your daughter about qualities. Your grandmother had beautiful hands. Your grandfather had a kind smile. Your great-aunt was known for her singing. These small details matter. They make the ancestors real people, not just names. Third, you can honor the ancestors you do not know by name. You can say, "I do not know all their names or all their stories, but I know they were brave, They survived hardships. They loved and laughed and struggled and persevered. And because of them, we are here. We honor them all. And fourth, you can create new traditions. You can start the stories. You can be the one who writes things down, who preserves memories, who ensures that your daughter will have more than you had. You can be the beginning of a more conscious connection. The young mother nodded, looking determined. Kofi continued, another practical way to honor ancestors is through the work we do. If your grandfather was a poto and you learn pottery, you honor him. You carry forward his craft. His skills live on through your hands. If your grandmother was known for her kindness and you cultivate kindness in your own life, you honor her. Her spirit lives on through your actions. We honor ancestors not just by remembering them, but by embodying their best qualities, by continuing their good work, by building on the foundation they laid. There is a family in a neighboring village. The grandfather was a teacher. He taught children to read and write. He believed education was the path to a better life. When he died, his children and grandchildren made a commitment. Each one would teach at least one person to read. It did not have to be formal schooling, just sharing the skill. Over the years, because of this one family's commitment to honoring their grandfather's passion, dozens of people learned to read who otherwise would not have. The grandfather's impact multiplied far beyond what he accomplished in his own lifetime. That is true honoring. Kwame spoke up again. What about ancestors who did things we cannot or should not continue? Like my grandfather was a warrior. He fought in battles. I am not a warrior. Does that mean I am not honoring him? No, Kofi said firmly. You honor the spirit of what he did, not the exact form. Your grandfather was a warrior. He was brave. He protected his people. He stood against threats. You can be brave in your own way. You can protect people in your own way. Maybe you stand up against injustice with your words instead of a spear. Maybe you protect your family by working hard to provide for them. Maybe you defend the vulnerable in your community. The form changes, but the spirit remains. Honor is not about copying exactly. It is about understanding the essence and expressing it in ways that fit your own time and circumstances. This seemed to satisfy Kwame, who nodded thoughtfully. Kofi looked up at the sky. The moon had risen high. The stars were brilliant. He could feel the night deepening, but he could also feel that his audience was still engaged, still hungry for more. Let me tell you about one more practice that Amara's descendants established. Once a year, on the anniversary of Amara's journey to the sacred grove, the family would go on a pilgrimage. Not necessarily to the sacred grove itself, though some years they did go there, but to some place of significance to the family. They would walk together. They would tell stories along the way. They would sing the old songs they would remember. And at their destination, they would perform a ceremony of gratitude. They would thank the ancestors for all they had received, for the life they enjoyed, for the connections they shared. This annual pilgrimage became a time of renewal, a time to reconnect with the family, a time to remember what mattered. In our busy lives, we often forget to stop and appreciate. We forget to reflect. This pilgrimage forced them to do so. Many families have adopted similar practices, maybe not a long journey, but an annual gathering. A day set aside specifically to honor the ancestors, to tell stories, to share memories, to strengthen bonds. These practices, these daily and annual acts of remembering, they are what keep the connection strong. They are what prevent the rituals from becoming empty. They are what ensure that each new generation understands and values the ancestors. Kofi tapped his drum softly. And there is one more thing I want to say about practical honoring. It is about being a good ancestor yourself. Remember, you will be an ancestor one day. What are you doing now to be worthy of remembering? Are you living with integrity? Are you being kind? Are you working hard? Are you treating others with respect? Are you contributing to your community? Are you learning and growing? Are you passing on wisdom? Every day, with every choice, you are writing the story that your descendants will tell about you. Make it a good story. Make it one that will inspire them. Make it one that will give them strength when they face their own challenges. This is not about being perfect. No one is perfect. Even the greatest ancestors made mistakes. But it is about trying, about caring, about living with intention and purpose. When you lie down at night, ask yourself, did I today live in a way that would make my ancestors proud? Did I honor their legacy? Did I add something good to the great chain? If the answer is yes, you can sleep peacefully. If the answer is no, then tomorrow is a new day, a new opportunity. The ancestors are patient. They understand struggle. They do not expect perfection, but they do expect effort. Kofi smiled gently at his audience. And when you do this, when you live with this consciousness, something magical happens. You feel supported. You feel less alone. You feel part of something bigger than yourself. And this gives you strength you did not know you had. This is the practical power of honoring ancestors. Not just spiritual comfort, though there is that, but actual tangible strength for daily life. Resilience, purpose, connection. These are gifts the ancestors give when we honor them properly. He set down his drum and stretched his arms. But we are not done yet. There is more to tell about how this practice spreads beyond families, about how it builds communities, about how it creates peace. Rest now, dear ones. We are near the end of our journey together. Just a little more to go. After another brief rest, after fresh wood had been added to the fire and water passed around, Kofi resumed his place. The night had grown deeper, quieter. The perfect time for the deeper wisdom he was about to share. Now I want to speak, Kofi began, about something that Amara discovered as her work spread. Something beautiful and unexpected. She found that when people honor their ancestors properly, it does more than strengthen individual families. It transforms entire communities. He leaned forward, his eyes reflecting the firelight. You see, when each family is rooted in their own ancestral story, they become more stable, more grounded. And when stable families come together, they create stable communities. But there is more to it than that. Amara noticed something interesting in the villages she helped. After people reconnected with their ancestors, disputes became easier to settle. Old feuds were resolved. Communities became more peaceful. At first, she did not understand why. Then she had a realization. Kofi paused for effect. When you truly honor your ancestors, you cannot help but recognize that everyone else is also honoring their ancestors. You see that every person comes from a long line of people who struggled and loved and survived. You see that every person carries within them the hopes and dreams of all who came before them. This creates empathy. This creates respect, even for those you disagree with, even for those who are different from you. There was a story from one of the villages Amara visited. 2 families had been feuding for 3 generations. No one even remembered how the feud started. But it was kept alive through stories. Their grandfather wronged our grandfather. We will never forgive. The feud had caused much pain. The families would not speak to each other. They would not trade with each other. When one family had a celebration, the other would conspicuously absent themselves. It poisoned the whole village. Amara led both families through the ceremony of remembering. She had each family speak about their ancestors. She had them pour libations. She had them share stories. And something remarkable happened. As the first family spoke about their grandfather, telling stories of his kindness, his hard work, his love for his children, the second family listened. They heard the genuine love and respect. They saw that this man, their supposed enemy, had been a real person, someone who loved and was loved. Then the second family spoke of their grandfather, and the first family listened, and they too saw the humanity, the love, the loss. By the end of the ceremony, both families were weeping, not for their feud, but for the waste, for the years of separation, for the suffering they had caused each other. The oldest members of each family approached each other. They embraced. They apologized, not for whatever the original grievance had been, but for keeping the feud alive, for teaching their children to hate, for dishonoring the memory of both grandfathers, who, they realized, had probably both been good men whose conflict had been blown out of proportion. Kofi's voice was warm with satisfaction. The feud ended that day. The families became not just peaceful neighbors, but friends. They realized they were all part of the same larger community, all part of the same human family. This is what ancestor honoring does. It helps us see each other's humanity. It breaks down the barriers we create between us and them. In another village, there was a tension between the old and the young. The elders felt the young people did not respect tradition. The young people felt the elders were stuck in the past, unwilling to change or adapt. This is a common tension, yes? We see it in our own village sometimes. Several people nodded. Amara worked with this village to create a new tradition. They called it the bridge ceremony. Once a month, the village would gather. Young people would ask the elders questions. Real questions, not just polite ones. Why do we do things this way? What was life like when you were young? What mistakes did you make that you wish you could undo? And the elders would answer honestly. They would share not just the glorious stories, but the struggles, the doubts, the failures. They would speak as real people, not as perfect paragons. Then the elders would ask the young people questions. What challenges do you face that we did not face? What dreams do you have for the future? What do you need from us to help you succeed? And the young people would answer. They would speak their truth. Through these conversations, understanding grew. The elders realized that the world had indeed changed and some old ways needed to be adapted. The young people realized that the old ways often contained wisdom that was still relevant, even if it needed to be expressed differently. The bridge ceremony became the most important gathering of the month. It built respect between generations. It ensured that wisdom flowed both ways, from old to young, yes, but also from young to old, because each generation has something to teach. Kofi smiled broadly. This is what Amara called the community of remembering. Not just individual families honoring their ancestors, but whole villages recognizing their interconnection, their shared history, their common humanity. She taught that everyone in a village is, in some way, related. Maybe not by blood, but by shared experience, by living on the same land, by depending on the same resources, by facing the same challenges. When the village as a whole honors the collective ancestors, when they remember the founding of the village, the challenges overcome, the growth achieved, they build a shared identity. They become more than just individuals living near each other. They become a true community. A middle-aged man spoke up. Grandfather, our village has people from different tribes. We have different traditions, different ancestors. How can we honor collectively when our ancestors are different? Ah, Kofi said, pleased with the question. Another challenge Amara faced, and she found a beautiful solution. She taught villages to have 2 levels of ceremony. First, each family or tribal group would honor their own specific ancestors in their own way. This respects the differences, this maintains the unique traditions. But then the whole village would come together to honor the collective ancestors. Not specific people, but the spirit of all who came before. They would say, we honor all ancestors of all people who live here. We may come from different lineages, but we share this land now. We share this present. We will share this future. We honor the wisdom of all traditions. This created unity without erasing differences. Diversity was celebrated, not suppressed, but underneath the diversity was a recognition of shared humanity, of shared purpose. In these multi-tribal villages, the ceremonies became festivals of culture. Each group would share their songs, their dances, their stories, and others would listen and learn and appreciate. Children would grow up familiar with many traditions, not just their own. This bred understanding and respect. Kofi's voice became passionate. This is crucial for our world. We live in times of mixing, times when different peoples are coming into contact more and more. This can create conflict, yes, but it does not have to. If we approach it with the wisdom of ancestor honoring, if we recognize that every person comes from a sacred lineage, that every tradition contains valuable wisdom, then diversity becomes strength rather than division. Amara used to say, we are like different trees in the same forest. We may look different, we may have different needs, but we all draw from the same earth. We are all reaching toward the same sky. We are all part of the same ecosystem. When villages embodied this understanding, they became models for others. They became places of peace and prosperity. People wanted to live there, wanted to raise their children there, because they felt safe, they felt valued, they felt connected. Mama Kibibi spoke. I have seen this. In my youth, our village had much conflict. family against family, tribe against tribe. But as we began to honor our ancestors properly, as we began to see each other's humanity, the conflicts faded. Now we are one village, one community. It is a miracle. Not a miracle, Kofi said gently. A natural result. When you plant good seeds in good soil and tend them well, you get a good harvest. When you plant understanding and respect and connection, you harvest peace and community. Let me tell you another story. There was a village that faced a terrible drought, worse even than what Mazemba faced. The crops failed, the wells ran dry, people were starving. In the past, such a crisis would have torn the village apart. Families would have hoarded what little they had. They would have stolen from each other. They would have fled, leaving the weak behind. But this village had learned from Amara's teachings. They had established strong ancestral practices. When the crisis came, they gathered. They performed a ceremony. They called on the collective wisdom of all their ancestors, and they asked, what would our ancestors do? How would they handle this? The answers came, not as voices from the sky, but as memories. Stories they had heard, examples they had been taught. One elder remembered a story of a great famine generations ago. The village had survived by sharing everything equally, by making sure the weakest, the children and the elderly, ate first, by working together to find new sources of food. Following this ancestral wisdom, the village implemented the same practices. They pooled all resources. They rationed carefully but fairly. They sent the strongest out to hunt and forage, bringing back anything edible. They took care of the weakest first. It was hard, very hard. Some did not make it, but the village as a whole survived. And they survived together. When the rains finally came, when crops could be planted again, the community was stronger than ever because they had faced the ultimate test and passed it together. Kofi's voice dropped to almost a whisper. This is the power of collective ancestral memory. It gives a community a playbook for crisis, a repository of wisdom about how to handle difficulties, because whatever you are facing, someone before you has faced something similar, and they survived, and they learned, and they passed on that learning. When we honor ancestors collectively, we tap into generations of problem solving, generations of resilience, generations of wisdom. We are never starting from zero. We are always building on a foundation. Amara taught that the strongest communities are those with the longest, deepest memory, not those who live only in the present, forgetting the past and ignoring the future, but those who consciously connect all three, who draw on the past to inform the present and shape the future. He stood up, stretching his old bones. In the years after Amara's death, the practice continued to spread. Village after village adopted the teachings, and an interesting network began to form. Villages that honored their ancestors this way began to connect with each other. They would visit, they would share stories, they would help each other. A village that had a good harvest would share with a village that did not, because they remembered that their ancestors had taught generosity, that they had taught mutual support, that no village is an island. When a village faced a problem they had not encountered before, they could send messengers to other villages. Have your ancestors taught you about this? Do you have wisdom that can help us? And help would come. This network became stronger than any kingdom. It was not held together by force or law, but by shared values, by shared understanding, by the recognition that we are all part of the same human family, all descendants of ancestors who struggled and survived, all trying to be good ancestors for those who will come after. Kofi sat down again, his expression satisfied. This is what ancestor honoring builds. Not just strong individuals, not just strong families, but strong communities, networks of support and wisdom, a web of connection that makes everyone stronger. And it all starts with simple acts, daily remembering, monthly ceremonies, annual festivals, telling stories, honoring the dead, teaching the young, living with intention. Simple acts, repeated consistently, transform everything. He looked around at the gathered faces, seeing understanding and determination. We are nearly at the end of our journey tonight, dear ones. But before we finish, I want to bring it all together. I want to help you see how all of these threads weave into a single beautiful tapestry. How the personal and the communal, the spiritual and the practical, the past and the present and the future all connect. Rest once more, settle your thoughts, and then we will conclude with the wisdom that ties everything together. The gathering stirred. People talked quietly to each other, processing all they had heard. The fire was tended. Children who had fallen asleep were gently repositioned, and everyone prepared for the final teaching. The night was at its deepest now, the time when wisdom flows most freely, the time when the boundary between worlds is thinnest, the perfect time for the conclusion of this sacred story. When everyone had settled for the last time, Kofi began the final teaching. His voice was soft but clear in the still night air. My dear friends, we have traveled far together tonight. From Amara's doubt to her understanding, from isolation to connection, now I bring it home to you. He picked up his drum and held it like a precious thing. This drum represents the beating heart, the pulse that connects all things. When I play it, I create rhythm, and rhythm holds the universe together. The season cycle, day becomes night, becomes day. Life moves through birth, growth, death, and rebirth. Everything is connected. The ancestors are part of this rhythm. They continue in us, through us, beyond us. Kofi tapped the drum once, deep and resonant. When you honor your ancestors, you acknowledge this. You say, I am part of the great cycle. I received from those before. I will give to those after. I am a link in the eternal chain. Little Zara spoke up one last time. Grandfather Kofi, will you be our ancestor one day? Kofi smiled warmly. Yes, little one. When this old body returns to earth, I will join the ancestors, and if I have lived well, taught well, loved well, you will remember me, just as my teacher Ashanti is here with me now, speaking through my voice. This is the great secret. Death is transformation. We move from physical presence to spiritual presence, from teachers in body to teachers in memory. His voice became tender. So, when I tell you to honor your ancestors, I ask you to remember them, learn from them, carry forward the good they gave, be grateful for the foundation they built, and become worthy of being remembered yourself. Live so that your descendants will speak of you with love and pride, so they will draw strength from your example. This is how we build a better world. We plant trees whose shade we will never sit in. We create wisdom for people we will never meet. This is what the ancestors did for us. How can we not pass on the same gift? He set down the drum and folded his hands. When you leave tonight, do this. Before you sleep, sit quietly. Think of one ancestor, picture them, remember them, thank them, say their name out loud. Tell them you remember, tell them you are grateful. It need not be elaborate, just honest, just heartfelt, just real. Do this tonight. Tomorrow night, the night after, make it a practice. Watch how it changes you, grounds you, strengthens you. And teach your children. Tell them stories of the ancestors. Give them the gift of belonging, of identity, of purpose. The chain can only continue if each generation passes it on. Kofi's voice became softer, like a lullaby. The night grows late. Now it is time for the story to end. Time for you to return to your homes. Time for sleep and dreams. But remember Amara's teaching. She said, we walk through the world with two invisible companions. Behind us walks our ancestor, carrying all the wisdom of those who came before. Ahead of us walks our descendant, carrying all our hopes for the future. We are never alone. We are always held between past and future, between what was and what will be. When you feel lost, remember you have a guide behind you. When you feel purposeless, remember you are creating a path for someone ahead. You are always part of something larger, always held, always loved. He stood slowly and picked up his drum one last time. And so our story ends where it began, here under the Baobab tree, with wisdom shared, with connections strengthened. Amara's journey is ours. We are all called to listen, to remember, to honor, to be good ancestors. Go now in peace. Go with the blessings of all who came before you. Go and live well, live fully, live with purpose and connection and gratitude. May the ancestors walk with you, behind you, beside you, within you, always. He beat the drum 3 times, deep beats that echoed through the earth itself. The story is told, the wisdom is shared. Until we gather again, may you be blessed, may you remember, may you honor, may you live well. The gathering sat in profound silence. They were held in the grace of the story, in the wisdom of the ages, in the presence of the ancestors. Finally, slowly, people began to stir. They embraced each other. Children were gathered. Elders were helped to their feet. The fire was dampened, but something had changed. The teaching had landed. The wisdom had taken root. The connection had been strengthened. Kofi remained under the Baobab tree, accepting thanks. He was tired but deeply satisfied. He had kept the story alive. He had passed on the wisdom. He had strengthened the chain. As the last people departed, Kofi looked up at the stars. The same stars the ancestors had looked at. The same stars the descendants would look at. Constant, eternal, connected. He closed his eyes and felt the presence of his teacher, Ashanti. I told it well tonight, old friend, he whispered. And in the gentle breeze, in the distant call of a night bird, in the peaceful settling of his heart, he felt the answer. Yes, well done. The chain continues. Behind him, the Baobab tree stood sentinel, a living bridge between earth and sky, between past and present and future, between the living and the ancestors, and in homes throughout the village, people lay down to sleep. But before they closed their eyes, many did what Kofi had suggested. They thought of an ancestor. They spoke a name. They offered thanks. They felt the connection. The ancestors drew close. They blessed their children. They watched over them. The great chain held strong. The connection remained unbroken. The balance was maintained. And in this way, in this eternal cycle of remembering and honoring, the wisdom of the ancestors continued to flow from generation to generation, from heart to heart, from the beginning of time to the end of days. And that, my dear adventurers, is where we will end tonight's story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you feel connected to something larger than yourself. Until next time, stay safe and sweet dreams.